Starting now, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. My name is Councillor Steve Marshall. I'm chairing at the moment in lieu of Councillor James Clark, who's having a few IT issues at the moment. And if I can remind colleagues that this Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with the coronavirus regulations and the remote meetings protocol agreed by the Council, and which will operate alongside the Council standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would like to remind members that this meeting is live streamed to the public, and can I also request that you switch off all your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking to ensure that there's no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. Now, the Council standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during this virtual meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Can I also remind members to ensure that the chat function is switched on and to use that facility to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and camera to switch on your camera. For the benefit of everyone watching on the live stream, when I invite members to cast their votes on a particular item, they will do so electronically using the voting facility in that chat function, and the votes will be automatically counted and recorded on the system, but individual votes are not identified on the screen, and the chat room poll is not available on the live stream for public viewing. However, I will announce that numbers cast for or against or any abstentions before I declare the result, and as well as being broadcast live, a recorded version of this remote meeting will be uploaded onto the Council website for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request, and the images and sound recordings may be also used for training purposes within the Council. Thank you. And can I ask for any apologies for absence?
We had Jason.
Just Councillor Jason Hughes, Chair.
Thank you very much there. And is there any declarations of interest, please? I believe that's no. Okay, thank you, everyone. And can I ask if everyone is happy with the minutes of the previous meeting? If we go page by page, I know it's a little time since we've discussed that last. Just trying to get that. Okay, is everyone happy with the first page there?
Happy, Chair.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, second.
Councillor Whitehead will second that.
Happy, yeah.
Yep. Okay, I'm going through. So is everyone happy with those minutes and familiarise themselves what happened last time?
Yep, happy, Chair.
Yep, no worries at all. So if I can hear any one against to accept the minutes of the last meeting, is there anyone else that doesn't want to accept? No, I would take that as an acceptance. Thank you all. And if I can go on to the next agenda point, which is of the Public Services Board, the Wellbeing Plan Annual Report of 2019 to 2020. And if I can ask Tracy McKim if she can introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. As you've said, this is the report, the annual report of the Wellbeing Plan. We have present partners from the PSB. We have the Vice Chair, Kerry Davis from Natural Resources Wales. We have Kerry Doyle from Newport City Homes, and we did have, and I think he's obviously going to come back, Will Beer from Public Health Wales. But the partners are very much representing the whole of the PSB. As you know, the Public Services Board was established by the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and its key role is the delivery of the Wellbeing Plan. That plan is then subject to an annual report, which will be signed off by the PSB, reviewed by Scrutiny, and is also a matter of public record and a public document. If I could ask if Kerry Davis could give an overview of the content of the report.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for inviting us along. I'm Kerry Davis and I'm from Natural Resources Wales and part of the Newport PSB. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you for considering the second annual report. We are here today representing the PSB, and we'll do our best to answer your questions, and we'll listen to your feedback on this annual report and take those back for consideration to the next PSB meeting meeting. We value your time and fresh eyes on our work as the PSB and welcome your feedback in the spirit of continuous improvement. First of all, I'd like to extend the thanks of the PSB members to Tracy, Emma and the team for pulling this annual report together. We think it's a really good document highlighting some specific work that demonstrates delivery and the cross-cutting and collaborative nature of the work we are doing. We hope it demonstrates to you and the citizens of Newport that we are putting them at the forefront of the work we are doing to ensure the services we provide are meeting their needs. The report will be bilingual and available on Sway so that it's accessible to more people. We're in very difficult times with the pandemic and all services have been stretched and some things delayed, but we felt it remained important to capture the work during the year leading up to the pandemic. And I'd also like to flag that we can touch on later that what's difficult to demonstrate in the report is the maturing relationship of the PSB membership and how this came to the fore when dealing with the pandemic. The teams were very quickly able to work together to undertake both our distinct roles, but also to support each other and work together to the greater good to protect the communities of Newport. I think it would be good to just remind ourselves of the context in which we're working as a PSB. The annual report is produced every year following the Wellbeing Plan's implementation, and the overview that we've provided gives the opportunity for the Public Services Board to review progress against each of our 4 wellbeing objectives by identifying areas of good practice and using the following framework. What we've tried to set out in the plan is a description of the case study or example that we're using, which are the interventions and wellbeing goals it relates to, how the 5 ways of working are being demonstrated, what performance measures we've used to demonstrate progress, and then to set out some of our plans for the future. As a result of the pandemic, it was necessary to delay publication from July to September this year. And as Tracy has just said, producing this annual report is a statutory duty of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And also to ensure that as public bodies that we are thinking about the actions that we take in the long term, that we're working better with people and communities and with each other, that we're looking to prevent problems and that we're taking a more joined up approach. There's a really useful plan on a page in the document which sets out how the 7 wellbeing goals in the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act link right through with a golden thread to the interventions and the examples that we're talking about today. So I would commend that plan on a page for you just to help navigate through how what we're delivering aims to deliver against the Act. In Newport, the 4 statutory partners and 12 other partners form the PSB. The 16 of us organisations have worked together to produce the assessment of Newport's wellbeing through community wellbeing profiles, and then developed and implemented the wellbeing plan in 2018. And all of this in the first annual report has been considered previously by the Scrutiny Committee. So the local wellbeing plan 2018 is based on the 13 priorities for economic, social, cultural and environmental wellbeing from the community wellbeing profiles, and set out in the plan with the local wellbeing objectives and the steps that we propose to take to meet the objectives. We've tried to ensure that throughout this that we keep those 13 priorities that came from the community wellbeing profiles, because that's a really solid link into the communities and the citizens of Newport who input in those very early days into the development of the plan that you will have seen previously, and the report against that plan which we are delivering today. So we're really keen not to lose those priorities, but what we've tried to do is to bring those together in a cross-cutting way and looking at the particular interventions of the Newport offer, strong and resilient communities, the right skills, green and safe spaces and sustainable travel. As I mentioned earlier, the annual report explains all of this in chapters 1 and 2 with a handy table on a page at page 9 of the plan. And then from chapter 3 onwards, it reports progress against those interventions with case studies which try to answer the ways of working questions which are in the legislation. We believe that the plan shows really strong progress that's been made by One Newport Public Service Board and partners during the 1920 year in delivering a range of projects which exemplify effective collaborative working, often within our communities, working towards long-term wellbeing benefits. We're happy to take questions, but also really keen to hear your feedback so that we can take that back to the group in the spirit of continuous improvement. So thank you very much for inviting us today.
Thank you, Kerry. And can I just confirm if there's anyone else from the panel that wants to make any comments at all?
No, Chair, but my apologies for being late joining you.
No, it's at all. Thank you. Can I ask, Kerry, if you don't mind knocking off your camera just until you're invited to speak there, just for the meeting there. Thank you. And if there's no other comments from the panel, if I can ask members if they have any comments on the report itself, or do you wish to enter into sections? Because I'm aware that there's Kerry Doyle that has a certain time remit that she has to leave today. Is members happy to speak with Kerry about the section that she covers first?
I'm happy with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. Kerry, which intervention was it that you led on, please? Oh, yeah,
the difficulty is we've got two Kerrys on the line, so I think you mean Kerry Doyle, do you? Who's leaving us earlier? Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Kerry, I think you're on mute now as well now, Kerry Doyle.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, it's the Sustainable Transport priority that I lead on behalf of the Public Service Board. But as I'm sure Kerry Davis has already pointed out to you, we're attempted very much to highlight the integrated nature of the plan. So whilst I'm more than happy to take any questions that colleagues may have, specifically in relation to sustainable transport and active travel, it's really the integrated nature that we wanted to try and convey to you today.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much for that. If I can open it up then to members, if they have any questions that they wish to put forward, any comments, please, if you can raise your hands. Okay, I do see Councillor Mark Spencer, please.
Yeah, just a quick one, Kerry. Evening. Kerry, it mentions in the report, and I understand the problems we've had with COVID, but it does say the upgrading of bus stops. How far behind there were we with that?
I won't have the specific details in relation to that, Councillor, but what I can do is get that information and provide it to you, because it'll be one of the individual partners of the PSB that will be leading on that piece of work.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Chair, it's Councillor Clark. Can I ask a question? Because obviously I can't see anyone, so it's difficult to raise my hand because I can't do that.
That's fine. There's no other hands up at the moment. Feel free, please, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a question. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, and I apologise, regarding the performance. And I'm looking at a chart, local conditions, and safety seems to be in the reds since 18, 19, and 20. Is there any particular reason for that? In place and environment.
Can I just check with Kerry Davis? Do you want me to take that first, Kerry? Is Will Beer with us? I can't see the full list.
Yeah, so Will was with us. I can't see him now at the minute either. But yes, please, Kerry, if you would.
So, Councillor Clark, so I'm clear, is it the question of the delays that we've had up in picking up on some of the general statistics in relation to safety?
No, it was just more sort of on my page 75, which may not be the same page as yourself. Just safety has always been in the red since 2018, 2019, 2020. And being new to this, being new to this committee, I'm just wondering, in the place and environment, why is it still in the red in 2020 or 2019-20?
Okay. I am talking very generally on behalf of the Public Service Board. Our colleagues from Gwent Police lead on this activity through the Resilient Communities priority. But having sat on the Public Service Board for a number of years, the priorities that we've been facing in relation to safety have changed as the years have gone on. So, for example, just after the Brexit vote, we saw a concentration of hate crime and activity in areas like Pill, where there was a combined response from the Public Service Board. And now that wasn't a sustained response, and we're actually seeing a spike in that area again in some of the activities that we've got, that we're seeing, negative behaviours that we're seeing there. In the intervening periods, we've had issues that that a number of councillors have brought to our attention. And in fact, I think it was raised at the Scrutiny Committee last year about bicycles in the city centre. So whilst I would like to suggest that my colleagues, particularly those that work on the Resilient Communities priority, have seen progress on a project basis, regrettably, the statistics overall haven't really budged, because if you look at them on aggregate, but that doesn't detract from the individual work that's been done on specific programmes.
Okay, thank you for that. Chair, can I just follow that up?
Yes, that's fine, Councillor.
Okay, just to follow that up, and sort of this is again a general sort of question for all. Obviously, this report goes up to March of this year, I believe. Was there any? I know Councillor Spencer just mentioned. Was there any effect, or was it too soon with the COVID? With COVID, did it affect this report at all? And also the other question being, are you growing as a board, working all together? I know there's two questions in there, but sorry about that.
Again, if I may, my other colleagues might want to come in, councillors, but the last meeting that we had, which is now chaired by Councillor Mudd, the leader of the council, and Kerry Davis as the vice chair, who's here with me this evening, we had quite a detailed discussion regarding the impact that COVID had on the partnership. And it's one of these areas that where, again, whilst we don't have the empirical data to demonstrate to you the impact that it's had across the partnership, we know that working together through the PSB has enabled us to respond when issues arose. So whether that was dealing with the homelessness individuals, that I know that whilst we still have our challenges in Newport, there was a collective response on behalf of the council, the health board, housing associations and Gwent Police in responding to it. And I think that we were able to do that because of the work of the PSB. Unfortunately, the work and the meetings were delayed during COVID as we all got used to this new way of working and got zoomed out and teamed out in terms of the engagement levels that we were having. But at the last meeting, I think it's fair to say that we remained confident that we were still on track with the wellbeing plan. And I think Kerry Davis, my colleague, would like to add to that.
Absolutely. If I can start with the last point and also come back in on the first point, I think I'm struggling with the technology as well a little bit, remembering to sort of turn cameras and microphones on and off. So yeah, I think, you know, as I mentioned in the introduction, I think, you know, and this is the thing that I think is really hard to demonstrate in the plan. We're talking about specific examples to show to yourselves, you know, and members of the public in Newport Newport, the practical action on the ground, but it's really hard to describe how the group has come together to work as a team. And certainly I think, you know, through the other fora that we met in during the early days of the pandemic, when all of us were really stretched, obviously, with this, you know, absolutely, you know, incredible that we couldn't have imagined situation, it was really clear that the close working relationship that has been formed through working on these projects together in that cross-cutting way really helped us to, you know, sort of respond really quickly and to put things in place for dealing with the pandemic, I think much quicker than we would have been able to had we all been working in our separate organisations more separately, as had previously been the case. You know, it's really hard to demonstrate that, but the speed at which, you know, sort of some of those early discussions were taking place, and the ability for us to take away particular specific actions and deal with them quickly and in that you know, collaborative way was really evident, I think, to us as members. And that's the thing that we want to foster going forward, because I think, you know, drawing back into the point that was asked earlier about, you know, some of the red measures in the national measures that you're seeing in the latter pages of the documentation, I think, you know, what I would say, and this isn't in any way a defensive point, we look at those performance measures every year and then we're trying to test ourselves back. You know, have we identified the right actions in each of the interventions that are going to take us on a journey to get there? But it is a long-term journey, and some of this is going to take a long time to turn around. And, you know, what I would commend is in the report, there's a huge amount of information on the work that has been led by Gwent Police around, you know, serious and organised crime, and some really, really good working going forward that, you know, we are really hopeful will start to show those measures turning around. But it does take a while for the, you know, there's a lag period between the work and the measure. The other thing that I just wanted to throw in as well was that, you know, having gone through, you know, quite a period of, you know, the analysis that then led to the wellbeing plan and the wellbeing plan being produced, you know, there was a real determination for us as a PSB group to, in the early years of the wellbeing plan, to really focus in on delivery on the ground, because I think we felt that whilst it was really useful going through the assessments and then developing the plan, you know, the public just want us to get on with stuff, and they wanted to start to see some of that delivery coming through the fore. And so what we then agreed was that we would really concentrate on getting things done on the ground, and then that would allow us to sort of, you know, over a period of time, take stock of those things and then start to reshape the plan in time for the next planning cycle. But what we didn't want to do was to just feel or make the public feel as if we were just planning all the time but not doing anything. So that's why we're focusing in this report on the practical delivery. They may in some instances feel like really small measures, but what they are doing is striking at the heart of the things that the communities wanted to see. So, you know, talking about my particular intervention, the green and safe work, you know, we've really focused in on things like the local green spaces and developing up the local green spaces so that people have got somewhere really locally that they can go to that's good quality, that's free from crime, that they don't feel threatened, and that they do feel that they can own in a way and have a real stake in. And of course, none of us could have predicted with the pandemic that how important these green spaces locally would become to all of us in the lockdown, and we will see those continuing. You know, I live in, you know, a neighbouring area, Caerphilly, that's been locked down for 4 weeks now, and you more recently in Newport, and you know, those local spaces are really, really important. So that's why we're really trying to push that and ensure that, you know, the public don't feel as if they have to go to places like the Brecon Beacons or, you know, down to the coast in the Gower or Swansea or whatever, that actually there's some really good quality facilities near them where they can get out into the green space and have the ability to meet up with, you know, sort of other friends and family in a COVID compliant way. And, you know, none of us could have predicted that that would have been the case, but it really is an important focal point. So again, you know, we've been talking as a PSB around how we integrate that into every single aspect of the work that each intervention is doing, because even, you know, however much green space is available to people within their local community, if they feel that it's blighted by fly tipping or antisocial behaviour or serious and organised crime, they're not going to use it, and they're not going to feel that they can use it, and they will then feel they are locked in, you know, literally in their houses with nowhere else to go to meet up with people. And as we know, that will have a really detrimental impact. So, you know, so it really shows that integration of, you know, the work that we're doing on serious and organised crime, the work we're doing on antisocial behaviour, and how important they are to the work that we're doing on the green and safe spaces, to ensure that, you know, developing them is just the first part. Keeping them free from crime and antisocial behaviour is an ongoing activity, which, you know, we need to give the local communities the confidence that they can, you know, feel that we're on top of it and we're dealing with it, and when they report things happen. So just some thoughts, you know, around the general questioning, but, you know, we're not losing sight of those red measures at the back of the report. And you know, and I'm disappointed because some of the green measures, you know, the green space measures have declined over that period, and yet we know we've done a huge amount of work with a network of volunteers across Newport to improve things. So, you know, we will be vigilant to those, but they are long-term measures, so I think there will be a lag period before we see them turning around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask members and also guests if they can avoid speaking within the chat? We do have members that are not able to see the chat, and I think it's ideal if you could speak what you're noting within the notes there. Can I ask if William B, if you wouldn't mind just noting some of the stuff that you mentioned on the chat, just to ensure that all members are having the same information there, please?
Yeah, apologies, Chair. I might have missed that at the beginning of the meeting, but so yeah, I just wanted to agree really with Kerry's points that there have been some really good projects, you know, particularly around the work that's been led by Gwent Police, but in partnership around strong and resilient communities. So some of the projects in Ringland and Allway, which have used quite novel techniques to engage the local community. So using
Sorry to interrupt. I wonder if you could put your camera on, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, some of the things that some of the projects that have been run with mutual gain around things like participatory budgeting, which is actually putting decision making back into the community. So local residents can have their say about the things that they think are important and how public money should be spent. And you know, running quite novel ways for engaging local people. So we've run a series of World Cafe style events where people can kind of, rather than responding to surveys, can come in and sort of informally have their say about the things that matter to them. So I think that's been really good, and also the work that Kerry mentioned there on developing this safe and green network across the city. And there's been some fantastic projects that have improved greening, improved access to open green space. Some of the work that Holly Butterworth, there was a project officer brought in specifically to work on that partnership initiative. You know, and there's some really good case studies in there. But I think the point I wanted to make as well is that some of these projects maybe aren't aggregating up to have an impact at a population level, which is why we're not seeing that we're turning the curve on particularly some of these community safety indicators. And then the second point is that there will be that lag time. So some of these interventions will take a while to have an effect and have an impact before you start seeing you know, an impact on some of those indicators. And then in terms of the way the partnership is maturing, I think, you know, the partnerships we formed through the PSB has enabled quite a swift and effective response to the pandemic. And I put in the chat that I'm sure that will continue as we move into the recovery phase. And just wanted to note that there was a reflective review undertaken on the kind of the maturity of the PSB, which was taken back in 2019, and it was facilitated through Academy Wales. And I think that's helped sort of the relationships and the partnerships that were already there to further develop. So that was just my update, Chair.
Thank you very much for that update, William, as well. Thank you. It's just to ensure members obviously are fully engaged and well informed. Thank you. So I believe Councillor Kevin Whitehead had his hand up previously. Can I confirm that, Kevin, if you want to come in, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I did have a question around the green spaces, and I think both Kerry and Mr. Beer there kind of covered what I was going to ask, and that basically was also probably happy enough that green spaces are prepared, because I get this feeling that once certain measures are taken off, people will just be like through the gates. So they kind of answered that question for me there. My other question is not a retrospective question, because obviously I think we all agree that the PSB is a well-intended body of partners. I mean, that's why it was developed, irrespective of whether it's a statutory requirement. I think these are good-willed people in the first place. For me, I need to ask, maybe, is there a plan to deal with the ultimate, as partners, with the ultimate impact of COVID-19, and as work, have they got stacked up work, so to speak, and are they prepared for that stacked up work?
Thank you. And anyone from the panel can answer, please?
Shall I start off, and maybe colleagues can jump in after, and let me put my camera back on. You know, absolutely, you know, we have all been stretched under the pandemic, but I think, you know, a couple of things that I would mention, that we are all really keen to prioritise the work that will help us to recover from the pandemic and deliver the wellbeing plans and our original aims and objectives. I think, you know, certainly from my organisation's perspective, we are looking to prioritise the things that will help us to also recover from the pandemic. So we're trying not to lose things. We are obviously having to deprioritise some things to make space for other areas, but you know, as a provider of green space across the whole of Wales, and knowing how important that is for people to be able to get out and about, particularly when, you know, holidays are not on the cards abroad, at least for a while, and we are trying to keep people to non-essential travel, then, you know, we've tried to accelerate really quickly the work that we are doing to ensure that, you know, the facilities that we offer are COVID safe, that people can be sure that, you know, when they do go to our facilities, that they are going to be able to socially distance, that there will be, you know, plenty of information around and routes to walk around, so that we don't have, you know, groups of people amassing in key points, and also that, you know, the facilities that we provide that support people visiting places are, you know, clean and cleaned regularly and as safe as we can make them. So I think there is a prioritisation piece of work going on, certainly in my organisation, and I would imagine, and I know discussing with some of the partners, that that is absolutely happening in the other organisations as well. And the other thing that I would mention is that we are all, as intervention leads, also looking at our interventions and the actions with a COVID, you know, sort of view on it, to see whether or not, you know, in the interventions themselves, we ought to be bringing things forward. So again, by way of example, on the green and safe theme, we had another look at our vision and our actions, and one of the things that we've looked to bring forward is to look at how we can provide an easily accessible map of what is available to people in their local area, so that when, you know, we had messages like, you know, what's within 5 miles, what's within your ward, is that, you know, we can look to develop up the tools that we were perhaps working on in a longer time period, to get those brought forward, so that, you know, they are useful now when people really need them. So, you know, so certainly there's a lot of prioritization going on. The other thing that I would mention from an organizational point of view is that, you know, the local authority, through the Welsh Local Government Association, together with the chair of my organisation, Sir David Henshaw, has been tasked by the Minister to look at a green recovery to COVID and to look at the sorts of things that we can all do as public bodies, as well as Public Services Board, to help in the situation. And that includes everything from the things that you would naturally expect Natural Resources Wales to be interested in terms of the environment and biodiversity and things, but also in terms of how can we find ways to quickly bring in, you know, the young people who have been particularly affected in terms of their economic and job prospects into our organisations to allow them to gain, you know, really good experience, you know, for 9 to 12 months, so that, you know, they haven't suffered from a wasted year, that they've spent, you know, time within an organisation, learning to work in an organisation. And hopefully, you know, what we would like to do from our perspective in NRW is to ensure that they then perhaps ignite a passion for the environment that they take through the rest of their lives. But, you know, the absolute, you know, minimum would be that they leave with a good experience of working, that they're paid to do that, and they're not just kicking their heels because their opportunities were suddenly taken away from them in COVID. So I think for me, you know, they are the sorts of things that I think demonstrate that, you know, we are thinking about the things that naturally you would expect us to do, ensuring that, you know, from NRW's perspective, that the environment is safe and sound and well cared for and available for us all to use, and to look after us in our lives, but also that as organisations that we are taking those opportunities to help in, you know, the economic prosperity and, you know, to play our part in dealing with all of the other issues that people are suffering from as a result of this pandemic. So, you know, so just some thoughts from me from an organisational point of view, but also from a Public Services Board perspective.
Thanks for that, Kerry. That's a comprehensive answer. Appreciate it.
Did you have another question there, Kevin, or is that okay?
No, I think that was a full and comprehensive answer, really. I mean, I think we're all aware of the impact and the possibilities of that, and it's just a need to know that they are, you know, the PSB prepared for it, and I think that was a decent enough answer. Thank you.
Thank you. And did I see Councillor James Clark wanting to speak?
Yeah, I've learned now to put my hand up. I'm learning with no screen or anything here, but I'm trying my best. An area sort of which I don't know much about, but I'm interested in, if that's okay, is the EcoStar scheme. And now I see the performance measure, which is really positive. The target was 30, and actually 47 have signed up, which is organisations. Really two questions. A, are we approaching organisations, or are now organisations hearing this approaching us? And it does state that Newport is the only area in Wales to offer this scheme. Do you know if other areas are looking at it, and could this be a template for other parts of Wales to take on?
Sorry, councillors, I'm not pressing buttons quick enough. Thank you for the question. So, yes, Newport is the key area that's been promoting the EcoStars model. If any councillors are involved outside of their work for Newport City Council in anything that involves freight, I can strongly recommend it as a scheme to you. Within Newport City Homes, we delayed the rollout and renewal of our freight activities by a good 6 months on the back of the advice that EcoStars had given us. And whilst as a society, I'd suggest we've got a long way to go in getting to the position where we're all utilising ultra-low electric vehicles and questioning the need for transport across the city. The scheme itself really does enable you to challenge how you're running your business and your association, as well as the policies that you put in place for staff and for colleagues. So it is a scheme to be commended. We had a slow start. We're seeing the better figures this year than we had previously, but I think coupled with the national agenda, Kerry Davis has already referred to the greening agenda that is being promoted within the Welsh Government, but across the UK. I think now a carrot and a stick is being utilised in order to promote the benefits of sustainable transport and for the impact and the efforts that all employers, whether you're in the public sector, private sector or third sector, can do in order to reduce, not just reduce our carbon footprint, but there's a genuine ability here for us to contribute to the greening economy that we're being told may be the way out of recession at the end of this pandemic. That's not my views, I'm just saying what we're hearing from others. So there is a great opportunity. Some of my colleagues in the council who are on this call with us may be able to confirm whether other PSBs have adopted it in the same way that Newport has. I know that I've had discussions with both Monmouth and Cardiff who've approached me on the benefits of the scheme, and we involved a number of partners in the review of the sustainable and active travel priority. That extended the reach that we traditionally had within this particular measure. So the bus companies were involved with us. You'll be aware of the successes of Newport Bus thus far in introducing their sustainable vehicles. And I think increasingly, I wouldn't say we're there yet, but we'd like to get ourselves to a position where we're seen as the go-to area for this particular theme and this priority. Now, whether that involves us putting in place large-scale battery storage, battery recharging areas in the future, whether it involves us prioritising charging points for ultra low electric vehicles, charging facilities across the city, we've still got some way to go. But so far, it's been word of mouth, the commitment of the PSB that have enabled us to get there. We are, unless and none of my colleagues are waving arms or sending me messages to say I've got this wrong, but I do believe as PSB we are the first one that has been promoting it as well as we have.
I'm not sure if any.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, and just before you come in, Tracy, I think William had a quick comment previously. William, did you want to quickly come in a second?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to build on what Kerry has said there, I think the ONS has reported that during the pandemic there was a significant drop in pollution levels. So I think global carbon emissions were something like 17% lower at one stage in early April, when we were in national lockdown, and that was kind of returning to levels that weren't seen, I think, since 2006. And we know the link between long-term exposure to air pollution and public health outcomes. So there's clearly something that can be sort of built on in terms of the recovery phase, in terms of how we get about the city and car use, and also remote working. There's been such a digital transformation, I think, during the pandemic. People able to work from home and use technology as we are today. I suppose if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, we would all have driven to the civic centre and we sat in the committee room. So I think in terms of what we look at going forward, we need to sort of build on some of those things in terms of sustainable travel. And then the other point I wanted to make was around the impact of the pandemic on mental health, which I think will be significant. So the impact of job losses and debt, and the fact that people have become quite socially isolated, either because they've been shielding or as a result of the national and local lockdown. So I think in the future we're going to think how we can reconnect people, but in a COVID safe future. So that's something that PSB needs to work on together. But I think the other thing is that people have also started to realise the things that really matter, and that is about the quality of their social relationships. It's not necessarily things, it's about the relationships that they have with other people and the quality of those relationships and being able to get out and about. So I think and that really chimes with the wellbeing objectives. So I think, one of the things to come out of the pandemic is people really thinking about what matters to them. And I think there's also been I've seen huge acts of kindness and, pro-social behaviour, volunteering, people helping out vulnerable neighbours with shopping and collecting prescriptions. And, I think, again, that's something we can probably build on in the future, that those kind of acts of kindness that have been everywhere in all walks of life.
Thanks very much there, William. And I think, Tracy, you wanted to come in as well there. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It builds on some of what Will has just said, because we're also conscious that the pollution figures have started to go back up as lockdowns reduce, and therefore that's something of a cycle. But in terms of working with others, which was one of the questions, we do know we're ahead on EcoStars particularly, and I'm pleased that we are something of a go-to place there, but we are working with others on things like and developing an active travel charter. So that concept really started in Cardiff and they've taken that a long way. We're working with colleagues across the whole of the public sector in Gwent and public service boards across Gwent, because really if we just did that for Newport it wouldn't be sufficient. We need to travel in and out of work, and that is about those of us that we can reach, public sector staff for starters, and then others. We do try and keep up that walking to work and that cycling to work and that remote working. So there is some other work going on with other partners. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. I don't see any hands up at the moment. So if James, yeah, if you want to come in, sorry, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, just a very sort of a question for all. Yeah, this is a big report. And sort of, I'll be honest, sort of going through it, there is a read here, and to me, there's a lot of positives here. I really do believe that. But I'd be interested, sort of, what's the view of the board and everyone here today? Do you see this as a positive report for the year? Are you confident that this is something that we can build on, obviously with the COVID difficulties this year, but obviously this is your report which you've put together, and is it a positive report in your view? Because I believe it is, but it'd be interesting for your view of the overview of the report.
Okay, Councillor Clark, I'm assuming that was to the PSB panel, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, yes,
yeah,
sorry, Chair.
Can I ask someone from the PSB panel to come in on this one, please?
Okay, well, if I start again, and maybe my colleagues will nip in after. So, yeah, I would agree with you. And I think that's why we were really keen to produce the report, because, there was, always the potential to delay it further or even miss a period and go into this year. But we felt that, because the pandemic started when it did, it hadn't stopped some of the really good work that had occurred through the run up to the pandemic. What then did hit us was our inability to then, use this opportunity to report. So we felt that it was really important to report, to keep progress, to keep people linked in. And I think when we were going through then pulling the report together, it just became so obvious the importance of some of the work that we were doing had, just all of a sudden become even more important. So therefore, giving people that, sort of information that might trigger them to look at, what they can do in their locality, and, if they can't go away, what can they do instead by staying at home, and what could they do to volunteer to help? So it was quite clear to us that it was a really important step to make. I think the point you make about the fact that it is a big document, the minute you start to put in lots of case studies and examples, it does then make it for a long document. And in previous years, we'd looked at looking at different ways to get our message across. And for those of you who might have been on the previous scrutiny panel, we did a video for the Green and Safe theme, which sort of took people through, a bit of a fly through Newport and some of the activities that were going on. And the intention had been that we were going to try to do that across all of the themes this year. That was one of the casualties of the COVID pandemic, but it's not lost on us, and we are looking for many more accessible and interactive ways to report the good work that we do. And also, I think for me, there's a real strength in partners reporting on the work of the PSB, not just the report of the PSB, because there will always be a cynical group in the population will think, well, you're only going to tell us the good stuff, and that's what you would say anyway, because that's what you've been formed to do. So really trying to encourage through our work with partners and our collaborative work is to get them to report on the action and the work of the PSB PSB, because I think, you know, that recommendation, if you like, or support from others, you know, far outweighs what we might say about the work we've done ourselves. So there's certainly my thoughts and some of the discussions we've had at the PSB meeting.
Thank you, Kerry. I don't know if anyone else from the panel also wants to make any comments. I take that as a no, thank you. I believe Councillor Mark Spencer wanted to come in with a question. Councillor Spencer?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's more of an observation, actually, and I'm sure I brought this up last year. Tracy would be aware of a lot of the hard work that has been put in the last couple of years with the Armed Forces veterans within Newport, and I'm sure I brought this up last year. There's very little mention of work being carried out with the Armed Forces veterans. The only bit that's in there is they had some stalls in the jobs fair last year. Now I really think that we need to push on the work which we're doing with veterans in Newport. I know a lot of it is being done, but it would be good if it was mentioned, a bit more was mentioned in the report, and I'm not even sure whether we invite any groups or anybody to these meetings. Thank you.
You've got veterans up.
So do you want me to answer that, Chair?
Yes, please carry on, Tracy. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, one of the limitations of the report is it is based on the wellbeing plan, so we do have to deliver what's said in the plan, but the councillor is quite right, we also need to engage with new groups. The previous year we had one of the PSB meetings at the barracks. We had a presentation on the Armed Forces and the Armed Forces Covenant to the PSB, and we definitely do work with partners on the Armed Forces Covenant. So I think we take that comment on board, and we could express that more within the report, because it's very important work to us. This year in particular, we've especially progressed within the council on that work, but we do have updates from other colleagues, and we could certainly add more to that in the future.
Okay, I see Councillor Mark Spencer put his hand up again. Mark, is that a...
Yeah, just thanks, Chair. Just a follow-up on that, Tracy. One of the better things that's happened in the lockdown, I suppose, is the homeless people being put up in accommodation. It would be interesting to know if these people who are homeless, if any of them have been asked, and if they are veterans, Armed Forces veterans. That just out of curiosity, that's all I asked that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have that knowledge, Councillor, but I can certainly find out. I don't know if Kerry Doyle knows, because it's your sector.
Thanks, Tracy. Yes, I can confirm, Councillor, we do collect quite a lot of detail on all of the homeless individuals that are being provided with direct support, notably through schemes like Housing First, where the first priority in dealing with someone who is a rough sleeper or homeless is to ensure that they have secured accommodation in order to provide the additional wraparound care that and support that they require, given the circumstances they find themselves in. So we should have that detail. I don't have it to hand, but I know it's something that we record specifically in relation to homelessness and veterans. I know that whilst I'm here representing the PSB, obviously, I also try to represent the voice of all housing associations that operate in the city of Newport, and all of us are, if we haven't already, all housing associations are committed to signing up to the covenant that Tracy has referred to, so that we will work with veterans and veterans organisations, particularly in looking at employment issues, and ensuring that we understand the unique circumstances that sometimes veterans are being faced with. So, for example, the consequences of PTSD and how that impacts on an individual's ability to secure a tenure and to hold on to a home if they're given one. And whilst at the moment this isn't an area that's been flagged through the PSB, it comes back to that point that myself, Kerry Davis and Will had made earlier, that the fact that we have senior leaders on that around that PSB table has enabled us to get closer alignment between the work that our organisations are involved in. So, for example, the Housing First initiative, which is supporting people out of homelessness, out of rough sleeping, whilst it may be led by housing associations, the contribution of our colleagues in health, as well as the police force, as well as the college, in actually looking at the longer term training needs of these individuals, is critical to the success that the partnership's had so far.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Kerry. Can I also ask, just for on the back of what Councillor Spencer was noting, if we could have some type of notification outside the report about the work that you're doing for veterans, because I don't think, even though there is work being done, it's not coming through the report. Could I ask the panel if that's okay to do, or through Tracy?
Certainly, I'll arrange that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Thank you. And I believe Councillor Whitehead wanted to come in. Councillor Whitehead?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just going back to what Councillor Spencer was alluding to, and speaking to partnerships. I do believe that the Newport Veterans Hub, and I don't think it's because of the pandemic, they were gathering momentum anyway in what they do. They have regular meetups at Rodney Parade, and they're a great set. That was very professional, and they're advancing all the time. And I just think that would be the ideal body to link with. And maybe we could formulate a conversation there between the Newport Veterans Hub and the PSB.
Thank you, Kevin. If I could link that with, I think, some of the stuff that Tracy can feed into us, hopefully at a later point, either via email or via a different meeting. Is that okay, Tracy?
Will do.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions at all there? I'll wait a moment. Okay, I can't see any at the moment. If members don't mind, I wish to raise one as well. With looking at the report myself, very positive work being undertaken. I can see there is a lot of good work. However, looking at the performance measures, I am a bit cautious about whether or not you're fully targeting in the correct way, not adding some figures like, reducing those using cars. It's not a rough figure of getting people off or how many more people using public transport. And I give another example of the performance measures as like English as a second language, ESOL assessment. The target was 95, but the actual outcome was 641. Do you believe that you're challenging yourselves properly in order to fulfill your functions? Because that's quite a huge difference between what you're actually targeting and what the outcomes are. And is there any way or potential that you could work to better that target again if your criteria was, set to make it more challenging?
I can come in there, Chair. Thank you. I mean, I think there is an issue, a fundamental issue that you're alluding to there, which is how will the PSB know when it's met its objectives, because the aspirations are necessarily long term in terms of the Act, and we consider that a little bit in the report in chapter 5. So during the second year of implementation, we've continued to identify appropriate performance measures so we can measure real progress and outcomes. A snapshot of these are included, but they don't always show the full picture, and I think that's a really fair point. A few members have referred to the data, which is actually the Thrive in Places Wales Index. That comes from Data Cymru, and that's an attempt from them actually to support this kind of work and progress with Wales-wide data that shows how people's lives are impacted by different interventions. But it is really tenuous to say this green and safe space intervention here has directly related to that outcome there, that, you know, that too many other things are going along, but we're working on that. We also talk with the Future Generations Office on that, because everyone has that problem. And also it's really too early to see the long-term impact of the wellbeing plan. What we can do is we can take the Thriving Places Index and think, are things getting better or worse? Are we targeting our energies in the right place? We will also be using the national indicators for Wales, which are published by Wales Government, to support wider performance monitoring to assess the wellbeing of the community. And we're refining our measures as we go, but it is a fair point and difficult to make an absolute judgment, particularly difficult this year because of other reasons, but in any year.
Thank you, Tracy. And on the back of that, do you believe strongly that as a group that you are challenging yourselves sufficiently? Because obviously, as mentioned with that past targets, do you believe that you're working well? What is the challenges as a group? What is the challenges to hit your what you're aiming to achieve?
Could I start, Chair, and then hand over to the members? So what we have a lead PSB member who is also responsible for board development. Board development is on the agenda from time to time, and we've done a workshop with Academy Wales, which is a Wales Government organisation, to develop the board membership and the way we work as a partnership. We've also taken Audit Wales feedback, and the board has a separate development plan for the board itself. My opinion, but I'm not on the board, is that COVID has accelerated the effectiveness of the board multiple times, because the nature of a crisis is it brings the partnership together if it's a strong partnership. But we nevertheless continue to self-reflect, and that's a really important part of the Act. PSB colleagues, I don't know if you agree with me there.
Yeah, if I could come in, perhaps. There were a couple of observations from me. I agree with Tracy, and I think that not just at the PSB level, but as organisations looking to deliver outcomes as opposed to numbers of widgets, it's really hard sometimes to demonstrate that delivery of outcomes in a performance measure. So we'll often have a combination of something that is far out in terms of, you know, the aspirational outcome, with some steps on the way to it to, you know, demonstrate the direction of travel. I think the point you make about whether we challenge ourselves enough and not, you know, sort of be too conservative around, you know, our sort of aims and ambitions. I think that's something that we need to keep challenging each other around that, and to give, you know, ourselves the confidence to be ambitious, but also to give, you know, everyone, the public and yourselves, the confidence that we are pushing things. The point that I wanted to make when Tracy mentioned Audit Wales was, you know, one of the things that they've picked up is that to be our most ambitious selves, if you like, there's probably some structural, you know, in terms of the legislation, barriers that need to be addressed. And one of the areas that we'd started to work on, and we are still working on, but not as quickly as a result of COVID as we'd originally intended, is looking to see how, as partners, we can come together with the funding streams that we have, because we each, you know, give various amounts of money out to good causes and community activities. We all, you know, at the highest level, aim to follow the requirements in managing Wales public money, but we will all then have separate, you know, sort of requirements that we've developed in our organisations that, you know, sort of add layers onto that. And the feedback that we often get from partners and, you know, members of the community that we work with is that, you know, you're all public bodies. Why can't you just have one set of requirements that you all work with? So one of the things that we're trying to do as a group is to look at the funding streams that we have and to see whether or not we can rationalise that down and streamline it so that we can come up with a common set of agreed core requirements that we all live by. And even then, if we can take that further and look at whether or not we can pool our resources that we give out in this way, so that you know, there's a bigger value pot there than, you know, sort of individual sums of money. So, you know, that's one of the areas that we're looking at to try to break through some of the barriers that mean that it's quite difficult to achieve some of the really ambitious targets that we want to achieve.
Could I add to that, Chair?
Kelly. And did someone else want to come in?
Could I add to that, Chair? It's Will here.
Of course, yeah, please, Will.
So I think just from a public health point of view, I think some of these population outcomes are long term. So there will be a latency period between any interventions we put in place now and those outcomes, which is really problematic. And as Tracy said, the attribution as well is very difficult. It's very difficult to attribute this because, you know, the way you do that is under controlled conditions, and we know, you know, things that are delivered in communities aren't like clinical trials where you can show clear cause and effect. So I think that, yeah, the indicators we're looking at are long term. The attribution is very difficult. So my view is that we need to be looking at how these interventions are delivered and the implementation of them. So firstly, they need to be evidence based. So there needs to be good evidence that what we're doing is likely to work. It's got a good theoretical chance of working. And then we need to look at whether these interventions are being delivered at the necessary scale to have an impact. So are they being delivered at population scale? So if the interventions we're delivering are only reaching 30 or 40 people, we won't have population impact. So the first thing is scale. And I think the next thing we need to do is sort of review and reflect on the quality of these interventions. So, you know, can we come up with some surrogate measures that show the impact that these interventions are having on people's lives? Some of that will be qualitative. And then I think probably the third thing is that there's sufficient community involvement so that, you know, communities are active agents in these interventions. So we're not doing things to people, we're doing things with people. So a measurement system for me would be, are we delivering these interventions at scale? Are they of sufficient quality, and are we reflecting on that? And have we got good surrogate measures, which could be qualitative, could be stories, that these are having the right impact on people? And the third thing is, have we got that level of community involvement in what we're delivering and doing it in partnership with the community? So I think that's probably the best way you can probably measure this, the impact of this plan. That would be it for me, Chair.
Thank you very much, Will. And is there anyone else from the panel that wish to make a comment before we move on? No, thank you. And does any other members have any questions before moving on to the next one, please? I can't see anyone moving forward. Okay, thank you. I have a next one, which is about the Newport offer and the interventions. Basically looking about the website that was mentioned about selling the city. Just really keen to hear how successful that has been, because it's okay having a website online, but what's the traffic like? What success have come from things about selling the city as part of the Newport offer, please?
I'm not sure I can pick that one up, Chair. Tracy or Kerry, do you have a feel for the stats around that use of that website?
I think no is the short answer. The website's been live for just over, I'm going to say about 12, 18 months in total now. The current leadership of that particular strategic theme now rests with our colleagues in the council, and whilst I know work has been done on it, I think there is an inevitability that during the pandemic it's every sector. Comms and marketing often becomes deprioritised when you're dealing with the crisis that ourselves and other public sector partners have had to deal with. I think, again, and apologies for repeating myself, but it should be an area that we could get those statistics for, and if the councillors were happy, we could get that information circulated in terms of number of hits. But I know that from an inward investment perspective, the last 6 months have been tricky for everybody. What I can say, because we were involved in a meeting with the Business Improvement District as part of the resilient efforts that the council are leading on to prepare the city for the post-COVID operating environment that we'll hopefully be moving to, is that Newport doesn't appear to have been impacted as badly as some other major cities. And part of that could be down to the fact that a lot of our retail operators, a lot of our businesses, as councillors will be aware, are local SMEs that are based in the city and that utilise the services far more locally than some of the big nationals. So in short, I couldn't give you a concrete answer, but I'm sure we'd be able to get details on the hits, etc.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Can I also ask a request, just also about the priorities changes, just to obviously update us as a committee as well about what kind of things, because of COVID and the recovery, you're having to adapt and to change, and what we would expect to be looking at in future as well about what you're targeting.
I'm sure that will be doable, councillors. At our last meeting, there was a great emphasis from the chair on the need for every priority measure within the wellbeing plan to look at the COVID implications of what's happened in the last 6 months. And there's been a number of references tonight to maybe the opportunities that have come out of this hideous pandemic as well. You know, air quality did drop, but then it went back up. We have seen more people walking and cycling because of a fear of utilising public transport. Now, we know public transport may be a longer term solution, but at the moment we know that we're not going to be able to take the public with us in convincing them of that argument. So the chair committed all of the leads on each of the wellbeing priorities to go back, revisit the implications, and I think it's then the intention for the PSB in totality to look across the piece at the interdependencies between those interventions in a post-COVID world and what measures we can be setting and targeting, as we've already discussed this evening.
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure if anyone else on the panel wants to make a comment or anything like that as well.
Can I come in there, Chair? Tracy,
yeah.
thank you. So also to say, I can't remember if someone said it earlier, sorry, we've got the community impact assessment where we're assessing the outcome on communities, and that will change over time. It won't be a standing document. We will be doing work as part of one of the interventions to develop projects with communities impacted. So we would expect that to evolve, and the plan interventions will all be reviewed to ensure that they're appropriate going forward. And we can, by all means, I should have said, update the committee once that's done, perhaps, which will be a little bit of time from now.
That'd be brilliant, Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And does any other members have any questions, please? Can you please indicate? No. Okay, if I can pick up just one more from my perspective. I know there's a lot of talk about the population level and about the impacts there. How do you see, obviously we've seen the report, really good work, but how do you see that moving forward in terms of getting and having that real impact at the population level, and for people of the population to actually understand what One Newport is, about the Public Services Board, and moving forward there?
Okay, perhaps I could start then, Councillor, and then others can come in. So I think some of that comes back to the points that Will made around some of the interventions that we're making and supporting, is making sure that when we start that, there's the opportunity to scale those up so that they do have a population level impact. There's, you know, something helpful about doing something at a small scale and then expanding it, but you need to be confident that the thing that you're doing at the outset is, you know, in the category that could be scaled up. So certainly in the green and safe theme, we're looking at, you know, for example, one of the things that's, you know, mentioned in the plan as a success is the work that we've done on green infrastructure and setting out, you know, we know how to do green infrastructure on a small scale. You know, we've all seen it in the, you know, the town and city centres and the communities. But, you know, what you need to be able to set that up is, you know, you need to have the right policies in place and the right frameworks to ensure that when decisions are made to make big investments, that, you know, that's built in at the start rather than coming back in later and then trying to, you know, put in green spaces if they haven't been planned in from the outset. So I think, you know, what I would say is that I think some of the work that we did to demonstrate some of the green infrastructure actions have now led to the work on the scaling up in terms of the framework framework and the supplementary guidance to ensure that that's baked in at the beginning of these big population scale changes, and that we're making that difference in that way. And you know, in terms of the work then we do with the wider members, not just of the PSB, but that are operating within the area of the PSB, you know, we're talking to Welsh Water, for example, around some of the investment that they could make within Newport that would mean that they would channel some of their funding, instead of being to, you know, wastewater treatment works at the end of the pipe, but actually putting in infrastructure that is, you know, green by its nature, you know, sustainable urban drainage schemes, for example, so that you know, they're then not waiting for the material or the water to reach them and then have to treat it prior to discharge, but actually they're dealing with it at the point of where it arises. So so again, you know, we're working beyond the PSB membership to encourage where we've got those key linkages in, to ensure that, you know, other partners are playing their part in making sure that the sorts of frameworks and the infrastructure that we're developing for Newport is baked into their plans, so that they're starting from the position of what could we do in a more natural way, rather than waiting for a problem and then dealing with it at the end of pipe. But there's some of the examples, but perhaps other colleagues can come in.
Thank you, Kerry. And did any other PSB panel members wish to have a say, please? Okay, I've had no indications of wanting to speak. Thank you. And if I just double check if any other members wanted any questions, please. Nope, I see no indication either. Thank you, everyone. And if I can thank, obviously, Tracy, the two Kerrys and Will for a really positive report there as well, in very testing times. Really, really good work, and I'm sure the committee will agree with me. The work that's been done is really, really positive, and does have a really good effect on the communities and real good progress. So as Chair, I'd like to thank you for that and for appearing tonight to answer our questions there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we move on, just to make sure, did any of the PSB panel members want any closing remarks or anything like that before we moved on, just to make sure?
No, thank you.
Yep, that's great. Thank you very much again. Thank you. And if we can move on to the next point about the annual forward work programme, if I can ask the officers, please, what reports are due?
I think, Chair, this was more a blank canvas for you as a scrutiny committee to decide whether there were any items that you wanted to bring forward in the next 12 months. Obviously, we've had a review of your outgoing work programme when the meetings were suspended in March, and there was nothing outstanding. So it's really a question whether there were any partnership reviews that you wanted to bring forward now in the next 12 months, so we can programme them in terms of the forward work programme. So really, it's over to you as a committee whether there were any partnership reviews that you wanted to bring forward on the work programme.
Thank you very much, Gareth. And I see Councillor Clark wishes to add in, please.
Yeah, really, just to back Gareth up there. Obviously, myself and Gareth had a couple of conversations, really sort of to move forward on this, and it's exactly what he's just said. You know, I think, you know, very rarely sort of, and sadly, maybe because of COVID, etc., we have got this opportunity to have a blank canvas, and really to choose what we want. So this is a good opportunity for that.
Thank you very much. And if I can ask from a suggestion, I know we normally review the SRS and also in relation to the EAS Education Achievement Support System. Just wonder if we can maybe look at those and if members would agree that they're important to bring back to the committee.
Just on the EAS, Chair, before any members come in, obviously they have an annual business plan.
Yeah.
So that will be in your work program. So when they are ready to bring that annual business plan before you, that will be in the work programme as a matter of course. What we don't know at the moment is when that is likely to be. Obviously it went to your last meeting in February, but of course with COVID, a lot of these plans, the annual reports and plans, as you've just seen with the wellbeing plan, A lot of those plans have been delayed now.
Yeah.
So things like the AS will come forward. At the moment, we just don't know when that will be. So that's on the list. SRS again is something you look at in terms of going forward. So that can go in the work program. I saw in your previous work program there were issues involving the Norse joint venture.
Yeah.
Newport Live was there. So again, those are things that you could bring forward. Again, in terms of emphasis, perhaps in the light of COVID and COVID recovery and response.
Plus,
So,
Newport Live currently,
you could look at.
Newport Live currently, as we all know, a bit under the cosh as regards what they intend with staffing levels.
Councillor, can you put your camera on, please? Thank you.
Sorry, Anne, I thought I did. So yeah, I mean that'll be, like I say, a hot topic as it is at the moment anyway. I think there's conversations going ahead now with Newport Live and their staff as we speak.
So the impact of COVID on Newport Live in particular is something that we could bring forward to a future meeting, and ask Steve Ward if he's prepared to attend.
That'd be really good. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Gareth. Also, Spencer.
Sorry, yeah, Gareth. Yeah, you are right. That obviously reports are going to be coming in late, but when they do come in, if we're notified, then we could maybe arrange meetings around that.
Yes, we'll do that obviously as soon as we're aware that the AS annual report, for example, and business plan is available. We will program that in for a future meeting. But in terms of Newport Live and anything else that you want to bring forward, if you let us know, then we can check the arrangements and we can build that in for your future work program.
Thank you. I see the Councillor James Clark wishes to speak.
Cheers, Steve. Thank you. And again, just thanks for everyone putting up with this tonight with me. Put my hand up, and I'm sure I've been on the screen for the last 2 hours. Is there going to be, Gareth? Is there going to be an issue here with, because of there could be a delay in reporting? Could there be a congestion at the end of the year possibly, which we may have to deal with?
You don't have to wait for annual reports to come in. The AS is slightly different because they have to have an annual business case that has to be signed off by their board, and they consult Scrutiny on that business case. So we know that's coming forward. With the other reviews of partnership and performance, you don't have to wait for a particular report. That's what I'm saying. If you want a presentation from Newport Live in terms of the impact of COVID, for example, on their business model and how that affects the partnership working with the council, you could call for that now. And similarly with the Norse joint venture and with other partnerships that come within the remit of this performance committee. So you don't have to wait for them to produce a report to call them before Scrutiny and ask for an update.
Okay, so adding on to that, you mentioned Norse. I think with COVID, etc. I think again, obviously you mentioned it, so as an example, but I don't think that's a bad example at all. With what's gone on, to get them to come in. I don't know what others think of that.
I would agree, Councillor Clark, and other members.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think if members would agree also, I know we have them report, but the social services identifying about the adoption and fostering services, I think that's also important, especially in the current climate as well, about what the situation has been throughout the process as well. I think that would be very important, and hopefully members will agree.
Happy with that, Chair, yeah.
Yeah, more than happy.
Thank you. Is there any other points that members wish to raise about the working agenda?
No.
Nope. Okay, thank you. If I can ask members to stay on the line once this meeting ends, but thank you to the PSP panel members again for your attendance, and very worthwhile. Thanks very much there.